The dining room of my grandmother's colonial mansion buzzed with the familiar sounds of a family gathering. 43 relatives spread across 3 generations, all gathered to celebrate Grandma Eleanor's 85th birthday. The good china was out. The crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier, and everyone was dressed in their Sunday best for the occasion. Everyone except me, apparently. I adjusted my simple black sweater and jeans, acutely aware of how underdressed I looked compared to my cousins in their designer dresses and tailored suits. My Aunt Patricia had already made 3 comments about my casual appearance, and my cousin Bradley kept glancing at my worn sneakers with barely concealed disapproval. But I'd learned to embrace their low expectations. It made what was coming so much sweeter. "Sarah, dear, come sit by me," Grandma Eleanor called from her position at the head of the mahogany dining table. At 85, she still commanded attention effortlessly, her silver hair perfectly styled, her pearls catching the light as she gestured toward the empty chair beside her. I made my way through the crowd of relatives, accepting kisses on the cheek and brief hugs from aunts and uncles who spoke to me with the patient kindness reserved for family members who hadn't quite lived up to their potential. "How's the computer work going, sweetheart?" Uncle Robert asked, patting my shoulder with gentle condescension. "Still doing that coding thing?" "Software development," I corrected with a smile. "It's going well, thanks." My cousin Jessica, resplendent in her channel suit, turned from her conversation with Bradley's wife. "Sarah's being modest. She's working for some little startup now. Very entrepreneurial." The way she said entrepreneurial made it sound like a euphemism for unemployed. I took my seat next to Grandma, who immediately reached over to pat my hand with her soft, wrinkled fingers. "Tell me about your work, dear. I want to understand what you're building." Before I could answer, the conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the birthday cake. My mother emerged from the kitchen carrying an elaborate 3-tier creation decorated with sugar flowers and 85 delicate candles. "Speech! Speech!" Someone called out, and soon the entire room was chanting for Grandma to say a few words. Eleanor stood slowly, using her cane for support, and waited for the room to quiet. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who'd lived through 8 decades of family drama and emerged as the undisputed matriarch. "Thank you all for being here," she began, surveying the faces around her table. "At my age, you start to think about legacy, about what we pass down to the next generation." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Everyone loved it when Grandma got philosophical. I look around this table and I see such accomplished young people. Bradley with his law practice, Jessica with her marketing firm, David with his medical residency. Each cousin beamed as they were mentioned, basking in public recognition of their achievements. "But then I look at Sarah," Grandma continued, and I felt every eye in the room turn toward me, my eldest granddaughter, who had so much potential. The room went uncomfortably quiet. I could feel my mother tense beside me. Sarah was always the smartest one. Grandma sighed, her voice heavy with disappointment. Top of her class, full scholarship to NIT, graduated summa cum laude. We all thought she'd become the next great technology leader. I kept my expression neutral, playing the part I'd perfected over the past 3 years. The brilliant granddaughter who'd somehow lost her way. Instead, she dropped out of her PhD program to work for some little company no one's ever heard of. Lives in that tiny apartment, drives that old car, wastes her gifts on projects that go nowhere. The disappointment in her voice was palpable. Around the table, relatives nodded sympathetically, some shooting me pitying glances. "Such a disappointment now," Grandma concluded with a heavy sigh. All that potential, and she chose to throw it away for impossible dreams. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, the distant sound of traffic outside, someone's jewelry clinking as they shifted uncomfortably in their chair. That's when my phone rang. The ringtone cut through the awkward silence like a knife. I glanced at the caller ID and felt my heart rate spike. Perfect timing. I should probably take this, I said, pulling out my phone. It's work. Really, Sarah? Aunt Patricia huffed. Can't work wait during family time. I looked at the name on my screen again. Forbes magazine. The call I'd been waiting for all week. Actually, I said, making a split-second decision that would change everything. You're right. Family should come first. I answered the phone and immediately put it on speaker, placing it on the table where everyone could hear. Hello, this is Sarah Wilson. Ms. Wilson. This is Jennifer Martinez from Forbes magazine. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. The room went dead silent. Forbes magazine was calling me during Grandma's birthday dinner. Not at all, I replied, watching as confusion rippled across my relatives' faces. What can I do for you? We're ready to schedule your cover shoot for the Under 30 Billionaires issue. The photographer wants to do the session at your company headquarters if that works with your schedule. When would be convenient? The words hit the dining room like a physical blow. I watched as jaws dropped. Wine glasses froze halfway to lips, and my grandmother's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates. Under 30 billionaires. I repeated, as if I hadn't been expecting this call for weeks. That sounds wonderful. How about next Tuesday? Perfect. And congratulations again on Quantum Dynamics acquisition. $12 billion at age 28. You've made history as the youngest tech entrepreneur to build and sell a company for that amount. Bradley's fork clattered against his plate. Jessica's hand flew to her throat. My mother looked like she might faint. We're particularly excited to feature your AI breakthrough in autonomous systems. Our tech editor says your innovation could revolutionize transportation, manufacturing, and defense industries. Thank you, I said calmly, though my heart was pounding. I'm honored to be included. One more thing. We understand you've already started your next venture. Something about quantum computing applications. I glanced around the table at my family's stunned faces. Quantum fusion industries, yes. We're developing quantum processors for artificial intelligence applications. Should be announcing our series of funding round next month. Fantastic. Our readers love following serial entrepreneurs. Oh, and Ms. Wilson? The President's Science Advisory Council reached out about your availability for a consultation next month. Should I have them contact your assistant directly? That would be perfect, I replied. Thank you for calling, Jennifer. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. We'll see you Tuesday for the cover shoot. I ended the call and set my phone back on the table. The silence that followed was absolute. Grandma Alina stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Sarah, what just happened? I took a sip of water, buying myself a moment to savor the complete shock on every face around the table. Forbes is doing a cover story on young entrepreneurs, I said simply. They want to feature Quantum Dynamics acquisition and my new company. $12 billion? Uncle Robert's voice cracked. You sold a company for $12 billion? I nodded. The acquisition closed last month. Meridian Corporation wanted our AI technology for their autonomous vehicle division. But my cousin David stammered. But you work for a startup. You said you were just doing software development. I smiled. I am doing software development for my own company. Quantum Dynamics was my startup. I founded it 3 years ago, right after I left MIT. 3 years ago, my mother whispered, when we thought you were struggling, when we were worried about you living in that tiny apartment. The apartment is temporary, I explained. I've been reinvesting everything back into research and development. It's amazing how much you can accomplish when you're not worried about impressing people with expensive things. Grandma Alina leaned forward, her disappointment replaced by sharp curiosity. Sarah, explain this to me slowly. You built a company worth $12 billion. Not just built it, Grandma. I built it while you all thought I was failing. I pulled out my phone and opened the Forbes website, scrolling to the preliminary article that had been posted that morning. Here's the announcement story. MIT dropout becomes youngest female tech billionaire. I handed the phone to Grandma, who put on her reading glasses and studied the screen carefully. As she read, her expression transformed from confusion to amazement to something approaching awe. Wilson's breakthrough in autonomous AI systems represents a fundamental shift in how machines process and respond to complex environmental data, she read aloud. Her technology could make self-driving cars, automated manufacturing, and intelligent defense systems safer and more efficient than previously thought possible. She looked up at me, then back at the phone. Wilson maintains a low public profile, preferring to focus on research and development rather than publicity. She lives modestly and reinvests most of her wealth into her next venture, Quantum Fusion Industries, which aims to develop quantum computing applications for artificial intelligence. The room remained silent as Grandma continued reading. Despite her extraordinary success, Wilson's family was unaware of her achievements. Sarah has always been intensely private about her work, says her grandmother. We knew she was brilliant, but we had no idea she was changing the world. Grandma looked up sharply. When did you talk to Forbes about me? I smiled sheepishly. Last week. They wanted family perspective for the article. I might have given them some quotes in advance. You told them what I would say? I told them what you always say about me. They thought it would make for good dramatic irony in the story. Jessica finally found her voice. Sarah, this is insane. You're actually a billionaire. Technically, yes, though most of it's tied up in investments and the new company. But why didn't you tell us? My mother asked. Why let us worry about you all this time? I looked around the table at all the relatives who had spent 3 years pitying me, offering unsolicited advice about my career choices, and assuming I was wasting my potential. Because I needed to build something real first. I said, something that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. Something that proved itself through results, not promises. Uncle Robert shook his head slowly. $12 billion. That's more than our entire extended family has made in generations. It's not about the money, I replied. It's about solving problems that matter. The AI technology we developed could prevent millions of car accidents, make manufacturing safer and more efficient, help disabled people navigate the world more easily. I turned to Grandma Alina, who was still holding my phone, still scrolling through the Forbes article. You said I had potential, Grandma. You were right. But potential isn't worth anything until you turn it into action. These past 3 years, while you thought I was disappointing you, I was actually fulfilling every bit of potential I ever had. She set the phone down carefully and looked at me with new eyes. Sarah, I owe you an apology. No, you don't. You were reacting to what you could see. I deliberately kept you in the dark. But why? Why hide such extraordinary success? I thought about how to explain 3 years of strategic deception, 3 years of letting my family believe I was failing while I built an empire. Because success changes how people treat you, I said finally. Everyone becomes interested in your money, your connections, your influence. I wanted to build something without that pressure, without people constantly asking for favors or investments or introductions. And now, Cousin Bradley asked, now that it's public. I smiled, thinking about the calls I'd already received from family members I hadn't heard from in years, all suddenly eager to reconnect. Now I get to choose who I share it with, who deserves to be part of what comes next. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it quickly. Speaking of which, I said, my assistant just confirmed that the quantum computing lab is ready for the official opening next month. I'll be hiring about 200 researchers and engineers. I looked around the table at my highly educated cousins. David, your medical research background could be valuable for our healthcare applications. Bradley, we'll need legal expertise for the patent portfolio. Jessica, marketing a quantum computing startup is going to require some creative thinking. Their eyes lit up as they realized I was offering them opportunities to be part of something revolutionary. But I added, anyone who wants to join has to understand something. This isn't about family connections or doing me favors. I only hire the best. You'd have to earn your positions just like everyone else. The rest of the evening transformed completely. Instead of relatives offering me career advice, I found myself explaining quantum computing applications and artificial intelligence ethics to fascinated audiences. Instead of pitying glances, I received looks of respect and curiosity. But the most important moment came when Grandma Alina pulled me aside as the party was winding down. Sarah, she said, taking my hands in hers, I said some terrible things tonight. About your potential being wasted, about you being a disappointment. Grandma, you were just. No, she interrupted firmly. I was wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. You didn't waste your potential. You invested it. You took everything we gave you, the education, the intelligence, the family support, and you built something extraordinary. She squeezed my hands tighter. I'm proud of you. Not because you made money, but because you made choices that matter. Because you solved problems that will help people. Because you had the courage to build something the world needed, even when we didn't understand what you were doing. I felt tears prick at my eyes. For all my success, for all my wealth and recognition, hearing those words from my grandmother meant more than any Forbes cover story. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out an envelope from my purse. Your birthday present. She opened it carefully, revealing a deed to a small research facility. The Eleanor Wilson Institute for Advanced Computing, she read aloud. What is this? It's a research foundation focused on using AI technology to solve age-related medical problems. Alzheimer's research, mobility assistance, cognitive enhancement. I'd endowed it with $50 million to start. Grandma stared at the document, then at me. You named it after me? You always said I had potential. This is potential realized in your honor. She wrapped me in a hug that felt different from any we'd shared before. Not the sympathetic embrace of someone comforting a struggling granddaughter, but the fierce pride of someone celebrating a true achievement. As I drove home that night in my deliberately modest Toyota, I reflected on the evening's transformation. The same relatives who'd spent dinner pitying my wasted potential were now texting me their resumes and business plans. But Grandma's reaction mattered most. She'd gone from disappointment to pride, from worry to wonder. She'd seen past the money to understand what I'd really built. Technology that could change lives. A company that could solve meaningful problems. a legacy that would outlast any fortune. My phone buzzed with one final text of the night. From Grandma. Sarah, I've been thinking about what you said, about potential and action. I want you to know that you didn't just fulfill your potential tonight. You redefined what potential means. Love, your very proud grandmother. I smiled, thinking about quantum computers and artificial intelligence and all the problems left to solve. The Forbes cover story would bring attention, investment opportunities, and partnership offers. But tonight had brought something more valuable. The moment when my family finally saw me for who I'd become, rather than who they thought I should be. Sometimes the greatest success isn't in what you build, it's in who you become while building it.